Okay. Hi, welcome back. If you missed last week, my name is Ksenia, and you could call me by my first name. I'm a Seneca professor who has taught at Seneca at York for a number of years. Then I got the opportunity to teach at King, and now I also teach for Newnham. So now I teach at all three campuses, and it's really fun because each campus has its own vibe and its own how would you call it, set of programs that constitute a certain atmosphere. So for example, at King campus, I have some students who are veterinarian students, right? So they work with animals. I have a lot of students both at Newnham and at King who are in the early childhood education, ECE program. At York, I would say that I loved being there for all the art students and designer students who would like doodle in class and like give me pictures of my lectures, like they would actually animate stuff as I was talking. And so here we have a fashion department that's just down like on the same floor where I'm sitting right now. We have firefighters and police foundations and nurses and so on. So I've worked with students of all kinds of programs. And I'm really excited to have your passion for whatever you want to think about materialize itself in the first assignment you're doing with me. Okay, so meaning I will not give you a particular topic to write about. You will have to choose your topic on your own. So if you were here last week, we took a look at an article called Be a Gamer, Save the World. So to recap, I'm going to share screen. And those of you who were here, I think it's good to review as well the kinds of ways that this article taught you something positive about video games. The article was written by somebody who's actually a video game designer. Her name is Jane McGonigal, and so she wrote this a while ago. It's been 15 years since she wrote it, right? She has an updated TED Talk about the same subject, which I shared with you, and it is optional. If you don't have the time to watch it, it's not a problem, but this is part of our mandatory reading. It could come up on the exam. So anything that is on our schedule that's mandatory reading is mandatory reading. And that's part of your asynchronous time of preparing for class. So, but last week, to introduce ourselves, we took turns to read the article together. And it also gave me a chance to hear your voices and have some introduction, right? So, but if you weren't here, there are many probably perspectives on the good or bad of video games. And what Jane McGonigal presents for us is a type of opinion piece that is based on her authority as somebody who actually makes video games and researches video game impact on the world. So she has authority, or we also call it ethos. And I'll review this in our lecture notes, which are available. They're posted on Blackboard. So ethos refers to authority or character or credibility. Okay, so this is one of the words I want you to think about. This will be helpful on the exam. So when, for example, you see this photo and there's like maybe, I don't know how old is he, 11, 12 years old? Guy jumping with a guitar, right? And, if we asked him why video games are amazing for you, maybe not everybody would say, oh, he knows best. Like you know, Jane McGonigal is a professor who actually designs video games and studies them and researches the impact of video games on the world, whereas a 12-year-old has less credibility, and therefore we would probably listen to Jane McGonigal more than to the 12-year-old, right? Even though the 12-year-old might appeal to what we call pathos, which means emotion. So for example, but video games make me feel happy. I think that's a really valid argument. And that's what McGonigal says in her article as well. However, when my 12-year-old this morning said, I don't want to vacuum, I just want to play my video game. And I said, okay, but we do need to clean up and I have to go to work. I work all day today, right? And he said, but it's the summer, right? So he appealed to emotion. He was like, Mom, I'm on vacation, right? So that's emotion. So what did I do? I used ethos. I was like, yeah, but I'm your mom. And I'm telling you that in the morning, the first thing that you should be doing is eating breakfast, because he was going to eat some candy. So I, again, used authority to say, no, breakfast first, candy after. And he kept appealing to, but it's summer, I'm supposed to just have fun, you know? And then so logic, logos, is our last appeal, right? And I said, logically speaking, if you never clean up and you only eat candy for breakfast, you will live in a dirty house with bad teeth. Logically, right? And, you know, after some whining and complaining, he said, fine, I'll vacuum, just don't take my phone away, right? So this is like a quick recap of how we talked about rhetoric. So rhetoric is the art of persuasion. And this is what we're working on with this assignment. But unlike academic writing, some of which you already completed with Professor Brierly, you created an academic argument that was worth 15%. Am I correct? Okay, so in your academic argument work, you're encouraged to probably appeal most to what? Pathos, logos, or ethos? You can kind of rank them. What would be number one?
That was based on ethos and logos, but there was one assignment in which we were supposed to write about our personal experience. So that was based on the emotions too. Then we were trying to connect that with the remaining two ethos and logos by
Okay,
adding additional information by elaborating that same assignment.
thank you, girls. So was it the author formative assignment? That was the personal one?
No, ma'am. The first assignment, which is very descriptive and based on the personal emotions, I'm talking about the author argumentative assignment, ma'am, in which professor had given us two research articles, and we were taking the reference from the articles in order to develop that academic argument. So
Okay.
we were using our personal statement, but we were supporting our statements with the help of those research articles. And we were then supposed by the end of our discussion that if you show any type of opposition to the discussion, then
Mhm.
how will you build that paragraph? So
Right.
that, yes, ma'am, the other argument was based on that one.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Gul. So then, yeah, so we've already practiced this before in the first half then. And in the second half, I will encourage you to now choose a topic based on your personal interest. But what you mentioned about anticipating people debating you, right? This is what I want to review from last week. So those of you who weren't here, the article posted for last week was Be a Gamer, Save the World. And so Jane McGonigal begins with a sentence that essentially sets up her expectation of immediate rejection of her idea or her argument. So she writes, we often think of immersive computer and video games like Farmville, Guitar Hero, which is in the picture, and World of Warcraft as escapist, kind of passive retreat from reality. Many critics consider such games a mind-numbing waste of time, if not a corrupting influence. And then now she starts to argue, but very simple conjunction, right? You know, she could have been all fancy and said, however, or in contrast, or to the contrary, etc. But she's being very like quick about her argument, and this is what we also want to learn, is to know when it's better to use a shorter word or when to use a longer word. So she says, but the truth about games is very nearly the opposite. Now, we talked about the fact that there's no such thing as capital T truth, right? Like there is no one truth about video games. But she's starting to argue. She's presenting an argument, and she argues that actually today, a lot of video games actually help to fulfill human needs, genuine human needs that the real world fails to satisfy. And then she spends a lot of time giving us statistics about how much money video games generate, how many people, for example, in the US. So notice, she's not talking about the whole world. Here, she's talking about United States, which is where she lives and where she researches. But she does have a world statistic about one particular video game, which is one of the most played video games in all of human history. And she gives us other examples. For instance, she believes that video games actually allow people to learn to be more resilient. So she says 80% of the time, like you die in a level of a video game, but you don't quit, you try again, right? And she thinks that this is a positive impact on the human psyche. And to further that, she shows us that studies prove that when you play games with other human beings, you begin to connect with them emotionally. And even if they defeat you in a game, you trust them more and you like feel bonded to them more. So these are all good arguments, but mostly like appealing to emotion. And then she gives us some statistics, which are more like logos. It's like, well, look, recently, more than 19,000 players of a particular game called Evoke actually got connected with the World Bank Institute, and they created programs that help to provide more food and energy and decrease poverty in more than 130 countries. And also, she quotes other examples where so she says, my favorite is the company that uses video games to help fund free libraries across Africa. So, I mean, this is real change, right? Like these are real examples of logically, like some part of the video game world actually gives people better lives, more food, free education, etc. Right? So hence the title, Be a Gamer, Save the World, right? So this is just recap of what we looked at last week. Are there any comments or questions or just thoughts out loud in response to our first reading? Which, as I said, if it's an assigned reading, it could show up on the exam as something that you need to respond to. So if you missed reading it last week in class, it's okay. You could just read it this weekend. Okay. All right. So if there are no questions, I'll continue. The lecture notes that I posted, so I'm gonna, 1 second, stop sharing this and share the lecture notes. Okay. So we're going to think about rhetoric, and before we look at our other reading that is about video games, I wanted to talk to you about ways in which we can think about a particular topic, and your job this afternoon is to come up with your own topic. Maybe you already have one, but my job is to make sure that you have one before you leave today. And so I'm going to share screen. So this is this week's document with lecture notes. The other one is from last week and is posted. But as I said, so we can think about different rhetorical appeals, and there are more strategies, but for now, we're going to focus on thinking about character, logic, and emotion. And so I want to share with you, and this is not a mandatory text, just to be clear, there will be no assignments on this particular talk, but it's one of my favorites where I think as a journalist, Michael Pollan is one of the best I've read, where he really uses a lot of good ways of making you think about a topic that is relevant to everybody, but he makes it very specific and very argumentative in a way, without trying to like make you subscribe to a particular way of thinking. Like he opens up the floor for opinions on the topic, and the topic is the way in which humans have changed their relationship to food. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and I apologize, I need to go back to my video screen. Okay, so we're not going to watch all of it. It's 20 minutes, but I'll show you about 10 minutes. And then I have an exercise for you to think about, and I'm going to put you into groups in order to start warming up your ways of arguing, right? Or ways of thinking about, not necessarily arguing, like argumentation is sort of could have a negative connotation, meaning that you're having like a battle. No, argumentation can be, you know what, like one of my students in my earlier class today said, I do believe that schools in Canada don't teach too many practical skills. We focus a lot on academics, but they don't teach, for example, people how to be financially smart and responsible, you know, and that this is something that, you know, this student wants to write about as a point of focus for somebody who is planning to be a teacher, right? So as a teacher, the student would like to address the fact that there are some life skills that maybe are missing in our education, and that this creates sometimes real challenges for people in a capitalist society. So, and you'll probably pick up on the fact that I don't believe in necessarily socialism, but I think that education, for example, should be free, and that people, all people deserve access to food, and that nobody should be starving. Clean water and a roof over your head should be a basic minimal expectation for any society. That is clearly not the case in our world, and I think that we need to think about, as people who are living on this planet, how we can change that. But that's a huge topic. And the reason I mention this is because you can't write your editorial about how to save the world from poverty in one editorial. That's not possible, right? But you could write something. For example, Michael Pollan argues in this interesting talk, I think, how cooking can change your life for the better. How cooking is something that is useful. So let's take a look at this. It's 4:40. So yeah, about 10 minutes of this. And then I will give you an exercise for 10 minutes so that you practice your discussion communication skills within little groups. And I will contribute to those groups by dropping into each one and sort of asking you what you think about it. Okay? So tell me if you can hear. Give me a thumbs up. Can you hear the sound right now? No? Okay.
No, we can know.
No,
Okay. Yeah, I need to reshare. I probably, one second. Probably probably forgot to click the button where it says share screen and then with audio. Share sound. Yes, sorry, they moved the button from left to right and I forgot. Here we go. Okay, now you should be able to hear it.
Want to focus politics on a notion that involves the rejection of principles around which a large majority of our fellow citizens organize their lives.
We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think.
I've been following the food chain, and this has been my work for a dozen years. This is, I wrote Omnivore's Dilemma, which was my first book totally dedicated to food, and that really looked at agriculture and how we bring food out of the earth, and it focused on farming to a large extent. And after I did that, and that's a book really about where your food comes from, which is something that in modern life we've lost track of. This story of where our food comes from, 75 years ago, you could not sell a book about that because everybody knew where their food comes from. They were directly involved with the agriculture, or they knew somebody who was, and they'd been on farms. And so I've been very fortunate in that there's now this job description where you tell people what once everybody knew and get paid to do it. And then I leapt ahead because readers were asking me a lot of questions about health. So I started looking at the other end, the far other end of the food chain, which is to say what happens to our bodies when we ingest this stuff. What do we know about the links between diet and health, which is a very vexed subject. And I spent a lot of time exploring nutrition science, trying to come up with some answers. And that resulted in a book.
Can you guys still hear it?
Called In Defense of Food, and another one, a small book of food rules, as it's called, an eater's manual. But along the way, I kept getting these powerful hints that the middle link of the food chain, the one where the stuff coming off the farms is transformed into meals, was perhaps the most influential. And this was surprising to me because it seemed the one that was most obvious. You know, cooking, or food processing, as we call it when corporations do it. But I came to see that the kind of agriculture we have is very much a function of the kind of cooking we're doing. So that if you're letting fast food companies cook your food, you're going to have vast monocultures of corn and soya and animals in feedlots. And the reason is that fast food companies and other food processors drive down the cost of food relentlessly and force economies of scale and efficiencies, or what are called efficiencies, on farming. And I'll just give you one example. If you go to McDonald's, anywhere in the world, you will find French fries, or chips, as you call them, and you will find that they're always made from the same potato, the russet Burbank potato. This is a potato from America that's unusually long and difficult to grow, but that's what they want, because when you're McDonald's, you like those red boxes with a little bouquet of very long chips. It looks really good. And so they insist that all their potatoes be russet Burbanks, and they further insist that they have no blemishes at all. There's a very common defect of russet Burbank potatoes called net necrosis. And you've seen potatoes with a little brown line sometimes, or spots that come through it. Well, McDonald's won't buy them if your potatoes have that. And the only way to eliminate that is to eliminate an aphid. And the only way to do that is with a pesticide called Monitor that is so toxic that the farmers who grow these potatoes in Idaho won't venture outside into their fields for 5 days after they spray. And then when they harvest their potatoes, they have to put them in these atmosphere-controlled sheds the size of a football stadium because they're not edible for 6 weeks. They have to off-gas all the chemicals in them. So you see, the desire for a certain kind of chip leads to a certain kind of agriculture. But the other thing on the health side, when I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, that the scientific understanding of nutrition is still very primitive. But I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are 3 incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or various pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use. It's a lovely word. Anyway, so I came to see that cooking has a huge bearing on our health. And in fact, there's been a lot of research in America that shows that even poor women who cook have healthier diets than wealthy women who don't. So you see, the usual class bias in the quality of diet is overtaken by this fact, this key fact: who's cooking your food? I basically developed this appreciation for how important these transformations are in the middle of the food system. And the middle link of the food chain deserved a book of its own. And that's what got me started on this book. That and the fact that home cooking is in free fall. It's been declining since the mid-60s as processed food has become more prominent and as fast food has really taken over our diets. And in America, I don't have the numbers for Great Britain, although I'm told they're quite similar. Rates of home cooking have fallen by half since the mid-60s. In America today, we spend 27 minutes on cooking per average, and 4 minutes cleaning up. Now, that 4 minutes should tell you something. I mean, what kind of cleaning up can you do in 4 minutes? You can crumple a pizza box and scrape some plates, but you're probably not tackling a pot. What it suggests is even that definition of cooking may be rather diluted. And it is no coincidence, and in fact the link has been pretty well demonstrated, that as rates of home cooking decline, rates of obesity go up. And if you look around the world, the countries where home cooking is still healthy, that tradition, that practice, have lower rates of obesity. So I set out to write a book about cooking, but the way I'm describing it, you might think it's a policy book or an argument. And it actually isn't. There's an implicit argument in it, but it's really a story of my education, learning how to cook. And I decided that the best way to encourage people to cook was to remind them what a beautiful, miraculous work it is, practice it is, and that we have been, I would argue, almost brainwashed to think of cooking as drudgery, something we don't have time for, or something we don't have the skills for. We fetishize cooking in our society today. We all watch television shows about these heroic athletic chefs who can do these amazing feats while the clock is ticking down behind them. It looks terrifying. It looks like work best left to professionals. And restaurant cooking has kind of become what we think of as cooking. But of course, that's never been the case. Restaurant cooking is a very specialized activity. And that's not the bar. We're being daunted about cooking. And then you have the industry with marketing messages that are flattering our sense of busyness and implicitly telling us, you don't have time to cook. You're too important. You're a loser if you have time to cook. And that's, this is traditionally how marketing works. You create an anxiety, and then you create a solution. So I do tell the story of how we came to this in the United States, and how a culture of home cooking was dismantled, deliberately dismantled by the food industry. They wanted very much to insinuate themselves into our homes, into our families. And they have been doing this, or trying to do it, for more than 100 years. And then something interesting happens post-World War II. During World War II, the food industry worked with the government to come up with some amazing innovations to feed the troops, basically. They learned how to freeze dry food and make instant coffee and make powdered orange juice, and to simulate all kinds of foods and make them shelf stable. And after the war, they had all this wonderful technology that they wanted to sell to us. And they worked very hard. They redoubled their efforts to sell us processed food. They were resisted for a long time. A lot of, when they marketed to women, who were doing most of the cooking, of course, women would say, well, of all the housework, cooking is actually the part I like best. It's my creative outlet. If someone can help with the ironing, great. But they kept at it, and their opening really came in the 60s and 70s when women went to work in large numbers, and the feminist revolution took place. And what happened was very interesting there, and this could be easily misinterpreted, and it has been by some people, as blaming feminism for the collapse of home cooking. That's actually not what happened at all. What happened is that when feminism arrived on the scene, and women were working, there was a very awkward conversation that unfolded on kitchen tables all over the West, which was, we need to renegotiate the division of labor in the home. And the food industry saw this wonderful opportunity, and they said, in effect, through their advertising, stop arguing. We've got you covered. We'll do it for you. We'll do the cooking. And the metaphor of this campaign, which took place in many companies over many years, was a Kentucky Fried Chicken, which took out billboards in the early 70s across America with a giant bucket of fried chicken, you know, the red thing with the 14 pieces of chicken popping out of the top, and just a 2-word slogan, women's liberation. It's very, very clever, because they redefined not cooking, which was kind of in disrepute before this, as the progressive thing to do, and forward-looking, and that we should industrialize our cooking, take it off the table at home. And men grabbed at this, and women grabbed at this, because it essentially solved a problem. Once again, create an anxiety, solve a problem. And that is, in large part, what happened. And women who weren't working, also, their rates of home cooking fell as well. So that's kind of how we got where we still are. They've gotten more and more clever. Processing, when we talk about processed food, there really are, 2 orders of processed food. I think it's important to distinguish. There is what is sometimes called hyper-processed or ultra-processed food. And then there's first-order processed food, which is, unobjectionable. I mean, freezing vegetables, is a terrific product. Canning tomatoes, milling flour. All these things, although we can talk about white flour, all these things, that's what processed food was until the last couple decades, when processing reached new heights of complexity and the ability to make whole, ready meals in great amounts. And I have to stress the problem, again, with this kind of cooking is that the kinds of ingredients, salt, fat, and sugar, key. Also lots of food additives. As soon as you're cooking food en masse to have such a long shelf life, you need a lot of chemicals to keep it looking as though it were cooked more recently and closer by than it really was. So you have this whole range of chemicals, which actually, even though we've been lulled into thinking they're all right, there are serious questions about these dyes and these flavorings. And as we're learning about the gut microbiome and the importance of this interior fermentation in our large intestine to our health, there's starting to be very important questions raised about some of those food additives and what they do to the bacteria that we depend on. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. In general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us.
Okay, that's it. I hope that, so hang on. I see that we have the same amount of students, good. So there are 14 of you, and I'm going to share screen of the exercise in response to this argument, or rather a problem that Poland tackled by writing a whole book, not an editorial. So you will write the 500-word editorial after writing your 200-word proposal. That's all I'm asking you to do over the next 2 weeks. So it's quite manageable and I think quite interesting. But to warm up our analysis slash persuasiveness skills, I'm going to ask you to join a group of about 3 students, maybe 4, and you will be answering, and I would like you, those of you who are not live with us, to basically, oh, whoops, sorry, wrong file, to maybe talk to a family member or a friend in response to this exercise. So if you're not live with us, that's okay, but you can definitely do this. Sorry, why is it? 1 second. So I want you to please actually look at this on your own, and then talk to another human being about it. And the reason I'm saying this is because I genuinely believe that communicating across contexts, so our COM101 course is, I keep clicking on the wrong thing, I'm sorry. Okay. Here we go. There we go. All right. So I genuinely believe that having a good discussion with somebody about a topic that you care about is a minimal requirement for coming up with a good idea for your editorial. But so we're going to practice that in response to Michael Pollan's argument about our perception of food. So in little groups, I'm asking you to think about what defines the way you eat, or what is the source of trouble in the way you eat. You can think about it that way. Like, do you see problems with the way that food has become something that people worry about? And I don't just mean hunger. I mean, actually in Canada, it's more like an abundance of choice that perhaps creates certain conflicts in one's family. For example, I'm mostly vegetarian and my husband and daughter love chicken. So sometimes, often, I have to cook for 2 families because my husband doesn't cook. And I've taught him how to cook a few things in the last, 18 years. But I think that's still, without me, like somebody who loves cooking and grew up with no fast food in the Soviet Union, I do believe that I was privileged to learn how to make food in a quick and healthy way, and that a number of people might not be taught this. It's certainly not really taught in schools, right? So I'm going to basically say to those of you who are tuning in into the recording that I would ask you to think about at least one of these 3 influences on your diet or the way you have a relationship with food. So one of them is agriculture or environment, meaning if you live in a cold country, like Canada, then sometimes in the winter, certain fruits and vegetables don't taste as good because of the cold. Or let's say you live close to a farm, like if you're in King City, for example, and you can go to a farm and buy fresh produce that is more fresh than your local store, grocery store. That's another influence. There are always personal health choices and concerns, or individual beliefs or choices, right? So you can think about that. So for example, I did not become vegetarian because I was such a smart 18-year-old who thought I want to save the planet. I couldn't digest it properly. I felt sick after eating steak, and so I stopped eating steak. And then there are cultural influences, which could be also religious, so certain restrictions or whatever other social constructs. So in your group, I want you to discuss how you think about what Poland said about the importance of cooking versus, as I put into chat, the idea of processed food, or how corporations make food that is not particularly good for you really addictive and cheap and easy to get. And for our exercise, which it's not for marks, I want you to choose at least one of these three perspectives and write 2 to 3 sentences, each of you individually, thinking about what shapes the way that you eat. And then you will share your results with the partner, and then we'll come back after 10 minutes and you will report back and share with me what you guys gathered from this. So I'm going to put the information, the questions into chat. So just a moment. So here you go. These are the influences that you can think about. I'm sure you could think about other ways of, you know, relating to food. For example, some people practice fasting, and that could be an interesting way of relating to food in a way that is not necessarily restrictive, but it has a logic behind it, right? So like what are some of the logics behind the way you eat is kind of what I'm asking on a very simple level. And so I'm going to pause the recording. Those of you who are watching the video, please do this exercise with at least one other human being, hopefully, or if not, just with yourself. So I'm going to pause the recording. We'll do the breakout rooms, and then we'll come back for the rest of the lecture. Okay, see you soon. Okay, so welcome back from the discussion. Those of you who are not here with us online, we talked about different perspectives on food choices, and some of you expressed the idea that you love to cook, but obviously there are time restrictions sometimes, and that fast food is something that is easily accessible, but sometimes makes you feel unwell, heavy, that maybe sometimes something like McDonald's could actually give you a physical reaction that affects your mental health. Some of you expressed ideas that allergies are a concern, whether it's your own reaction to certain foods, or you have family members and you have to take that into accountability. You know, nobody kind of commented on cultural influences, but for example, fun fact, I grew up in the Soviet Union, and one of the things that was available and it's really healthy, but like Canadians don't understand this, it's called buckwheat. Raise your hand if you've ever tasted buckwheat. I'm just curious. Anyone?
I even don't know what is it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point I'm making. A lot of cultures don't know, but I put it into chat. It's a type of seed. You can eat it like breakfast with milk, like cereal, or you could make all kinds of things with it. You can even grind it up when it's dry before it's cooked. So if you don't boil it, you can make flour out of it and bake with it. And like, it's very universal, full of good nutrients like iron and protein and good minerals. But like, yeah, it's, you know, oh, that's cute. Yeah. You just like your Quaker oats. That's fine. But my husband calls buckwheat horse food. He doesn't get it. So the point is, he grew up in Canada, I grew up in the Soviet Union, and I like buckwheat and he doesn't. And this is a reality, right? But so thinking about food, those of you who were here last week, I mentioned that I'm going to show you an example of my editorial next week after you write your proposal, but here's my short version of a proposal, and I am going to workshop this for you further so you understand sort of that there's a lot of flexibility in the way you can express your proposal, and all I'm looking for is a clear statement of topic and who your audience is, right? Like, what kind of people are you writing to? And what do you want to explore with them? So on the topic of food, here's my example, number one, and I can provide more on Blackboard for those of you who might not find this one as compelling, I have more examples. And we'll continue our discussion of your own idea after this recorded lecture bit. So my example is this. I'm a vegetarian mother, and when my kids were born, I was confused about the dietary needs of my toddlers. So I would like to write an editorial that argues that there is a need for balance in a child's diet. And in particular, I think extremes in dietary restrictions are dangerous. And I would like my editorial to educate young parents living in Canada. So that's my audience, not people in Russia or Ukraine, because I haven't lived there in a very long time. I know parents in Canada who struggle. I recently met a friend of my daughter's who's 10 years old, and I asked her if she would like some avocado on her salad, and she said, I've never tasted avocado. And I was kind of like, what? But no judgment, would you like to try it? And she was like, sure. And she tried it and she liked it, you know? But for me, that's like, wow, avocados are not part of this beautiful girl's life yet. Maybe it's a good thing that I asked, you know, because if she said, oh, actually I tasted them and I hate them, you know, then we could have avoided, you know, emotional disturbance of a 10-year-old, or maybe she's allergic to them. So like, I believe that there has to be a really balanced approach to how you talk about what is good or bad for people. Alexis, yeah, I love sushi. My kids, their favorite takeout is sushi, but you like it kind of hidden with a bunch of other stuff. So I imagine you don't just scoop it out of the shell and just eat it raw, right? Like you need it to be well, it depends how sweet it is. It depends how ripe it is. If it's not ripe enough, it tastes like grass. I agree. You got to get it avocado is the most like prissy fruit. It's like yesterday it's green, this morning it's kind of okay, and by the evening it's brown, and you have to throw it out because that's it. Now, I think like a more raw avocado tastes better than when it's basically pretty much rotting, right? So it's like you have about 24 hours to figure out how to eat it. And then you always get the grass ones. Yeah, okay, we can have a workshop on avocado choosing sometime. Okay, but so now that it's 5:25, I want to show you how I can add, this is raw draft, but I'm adding another sentence that I want to elaborate my proposal, okay? Because I'm asking you to look for at least 3 sentences, or also no more than 200 words in your little paragraph proposal. So I stated my ethos, remember, my character. I am vegetarian, this is my experience. I was very concerned about balance in my kids' diet. And so I decided to write a piece called an editorial, which is based on my opinion, but I'm going to back it up with sources which you're not finding for the proposal, but next week you will have to find 2 articles, just 2, that can help you elaborate your idea. So I can say, I am interested in the Canadian Food Guide and the recent change in its food group requirements. So I heard about this, okay, but I don't know much about it yet, and I'm curious because dairy apparently became optional in the new food guide. Okay, so I'm going to, hang on, I'm gonna get rid of that. So I'm going to ask you in the next about 15 minutes to actually think about the kinds of topics that you're interested in. And so I'm going to continue to record, and I would hope that you either use your microphone or participate by putting an idea into chat. But essentially, This is informal, this is your idea, okay? I'm grading you based on the fact that you can come up with a pretty specific topic, so not like how food, should be thought about. It's like, wow, okay, I don't know. There are a million different articles I can think about in relation to the topic of food. I am specifically thinking about my experience as a vegetarian. I am thinking about specifically children's diet, and I'm thinking about how to tell something to my audience who are young parents, or, in fact, I can improve this to educate all parents. Why only young parents? But I felt like, I was a young parent. I was in my late 20s, early 30s, where I was like, oh my God, do I have to give meat to my children, like, for them to be healthy or not? Like, and I had people in my life who told me that I have to, like relatives. And then I had people in my yoga community who said, no, I don't have to. So the point being, is that you want to engage a particular specific audience and use a particular specific topic. Questions? I hear somebody is unmuted. Go ahead if you have a question.
Okay, hi. So sorry. Myself and girl, my partner, we had been in our breakout room and we're just waiting. We're thinking that you were probably going to join us. We didn't know that the lecture had resumed.
Okay, sorry. So welcome back. I'm going to repeat this again one more time because the room I returned to had 3 new students join, so I was catching them up. I apologize. Okay, so can you tell me, did you join just this moment or how many minutes ago?
I joined before you split us into different groups, and myself and my group members had been in our group having the discussion, and we're back here. We're just waiting. We didn't know if to just remain in our breakout rooms or if to join back.
Oh, okay. I did send a broadcast message for everybody to return at around 5:20, I believe. But okay, so let me just catch you up then. Tell me, were you here last week? Were you in last week's class?
Yes, I was.
Right. Yeah, I thought so. Okay. So what we're working on is choosing your individual topic that relates to your experience. So you can't, for example, I have never tried to learn how to play the flute. Okay. So I have absolutely zero knowledge about how to play that instrument. And the reason I thought about flute is because I went to a concert a couple of months ago, and I met a guy from Ireland who has an amazing, beautiful collection of like 16 flutes. And so Brian from Ireland, who plays the flute, can definitely write something about the experience of being a flautist, right? Like, he has expertise about this topic. I do not, so I'm not going to write about the flute or any other instrument for that matter, even though I would love to, when I'm retired, to at least be basic on the piano or maybe guitar. My son is musical. He already did take piano lessons for a few years, and I'm hoping now that he's bored of piano, he's going to try to pick up another instrument. But in any case, yeah, so your topic is your topic. But again, to reiterate, my example of a topic is that I, as somebody who became vegetarian pretty young, I was 18 years old, I was really confused about the dietary needs of my toddlers when my kids were born. Because my parents said, no, you have to feed meat to your children. It doesn't matter, you're crazy yogi, you can eat your avocados and mangoes, but like your kids need meat. And I went to the pediatrician and he also said, give your son a piece of meat the size of his palm every day. And I was like, I'm vegetarian. And he is an amazing pediatrician. I really love his approach. He's not like, he doesn't panic. Like, he makes me feel happy and good about my kid's health, you know, but he was like vegetarian, and because he's Italian. And so Dr. Canatelli said, okay, well, whatever protein you eat, size of his palm, you know? So I came home and I was like, do I really have to feed meat to my child for my child to be healthy? So my point is, my topic is vegetarian parents are confused about what to feed to their children sometimes, because there's a lot of pressure in our society to think that meat is absolutely mandatory, right? And when we say meat, I mean, there are also like, there's red meat, there's poultry, there's eggs. Some vegetarians eat eggs. I'm one of those, right? But I was like, okay, like, what do I feed to my child? So I would like to write an article about the fact that I think that restrictions in particular, when you say, for example, well, I am raw vegan. I have a friend who does not eat anything but raw food, fruits, veggies, nuts. That's it. I think that that's dangerous for a child, especially if you have a child who has bad digestion, gassy, like, you know, is going to cry about eating raw stuff all day. So like, how do you educate parents? And my audience specifically is in Canada, because some countries have very different, as I explained with the example of buckwheat, there are certain cultural foods that like Canadians don't know about. So my article will want to give best examples of how to make the confusion be a little bit less confusing, right? Like, how do you choose to be a vegetarian mother and yet be open to other influences from society? For example, my son was completely vegetarian until about 7 years old. And then one day at a party, at a birthday party, he tried pepperoni pizza. That's it. I lost the game. He likes pepperoni pizza. And the reason I say I lost the game is because emotionally, I do not like the idea of eating pigs or cows because I think they're very intelligent creatures. But this is my problem as a vegetarian mother. And I need to consider the fact that if my kid goes to a party, he will be exposed to not just pepperoni pizza, but to other forms of fast food that are probably not good for you. But how do you then come up with advice, like a problem to a solution for vegetarian parents, right? So this is my topic, and my audience are specifically only parents in Canada. I can't write to the whole world. It won't make sense, because people in China or in India or, you know, in many different countries have their own cultural practices where they have staples that are not fast food. They cook more in some countries than in Canada, as Michael Pollan demonstrated and explained. So this is my editorial proposal. Now we have about, let's say, 20 minutes for each of you to really ruminate, chew on, ruminate, what kind of topic you really care about. And we can begin by just brainstorming. So the microphone is open to anyone who wants to share their idea, share their sort of thought of what is important to you. I'm really curious. Not to put anyone on the spot, but go ahead. If you have something you want to kind of talk about with the group, and this will help others too. So like, if you have a topic you're passionate about, go ahead. Yeah, Jessica. Yep.
Hi, am I
Hey.
audible?
Yes, you are.
Nice. I was just thinking about topics for this paper, and I'm really passionate about communication. So I was thinking about making a topic on the importance of presence of speaking and how important it is to be able to present and talk to people in a room, and you know, and it can be whether it's a professional meeting or if it's just meeting people on the street. The importance of being able to communicate effectively. So that's something I'm thinking about writing about. Now, additionally, I think you said that the audience, we have to tailor it to them.
Yes.
So, and I was kind of going back and forth between potentially just effective communication on how to meet new people, and or how to be effective communicator in a professional setting. I
Mhm.
believe I have to do one or the other. So I think
Yes.
that's kind of just where I'm struggling with a little bit.
Okay.
But I'm sure that if you have any feedback for me on that potential topic, I'd absolutely love to hear it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica. Okay, so here's what I got out of what you said, and I'm going to put it into chat. So your topic is communication and public speaking as, important skills, it should say.
Mhm.
So communication and public speaking as important skills, that's your topic. And I think it's wonderful, especially for this particular course, because when today I was teaching my first class and somebody asked me a question and I said, well, you see, the power of what we're learning in communication is that you could persuade people to do good things in the world if you're clear about why you are actually believing this idea, right? So, for example, the professional setting I can think about that is so close to your heart right now is the college system. So you could write about your experience as a college student at Seneca and how the power of communication and public speaking skills enable you to succeed in a certain field. So you can narrow it down to, and if can I ask you what is your program? What are you studying at Seneca?
Yeah, I'm studying just a general business program, but I've been working as a consultant for the past about 5 years or so.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, in the business world, if you can't pitch an idea in a good, clear way,
Yes,
you're not going to succeed, are you?
exactly.
So why don't you can also have like a combination, to be honest. So for example, just as much as clear communication and, the ability to state something in public clearly, it can, so you can use an anecdote from your 5 years of career in the field that you're in order to demonstrate something about communication and public speaking skills. And if I were to share something, so you hear me now sort of speaking freely to you guys, I teach in person, I teach online, but when I was a kid, I was painfully shy. And so the first time a professor in year 1 of undergraduate degree asked me to give a presentation to about 50 people, I had sweat in my palms. Like I was terrified. I was like, Jesus, just because I'm a straight A student doesn't mean I like to talk to like a big group of people. I was scared, so I could use that like as an anecdote of how somebody who was even, really shy or introverted as a child learned the techniques of public speaking skills, which are incredibly important if you want to have both a career and or good social, community, right?
No, I
So
appreciate that.
yeah, cool. Okay. I hope that helps. And I am going to try to breeze through as many topics as possible. So thank you so much for
Thank
sharing.
you.
Thank you. Alexis, I think my topic would be edutainment. I love shows and video games that used to be an entire era to help combine kids' desire to play with education smartly woven in. For example, although a little before my time, Pajama Sam games were great examples. I also recall Leapfrog in my childhood and combined games with reading and numbers. I love Computer Lab as a kid, and by extension getting to learn how to use it because I knew I'd also get to have fun learning, which doesn't always happen. I still find myself replaying some of these old games just for fun. And even older example of edutainment is the Oregon Trail game, Is This Available? I actually don't know that one, but the other references I do. So actually edutainment is one of my favorite words from when I was an undergrad, and I learned it from one of my professors. And I think all education should have some element of gaming and like excitement, because otherwise, I mean, are we really all that grown up? Like, I refuse to completely grow up. I I'm gonna take my kid to a bouncy castle thing on what's it called? Centennial Beach in Barrie for his birthday. And guess who's going to be running and jumping first? This kid, right? So, but now, who is your audience, Alexis? Because I agree with you that the topic is very clear. You want to talk about education being fun. Now, do you want to talk about like elementary school kind of edutainment, or you can similarly explore ways in which maybe Seneca provides you know, edutainment, or you can think about all the new platforms that have arisen. Actually, Jessica, I was thinking also about TED Talks, and how I know personally from my husband's job at York University that he met a student who was on the spectrum, but he was given an opportunity to give a TED Talk about being autistic, and it was one of the most empowering things that that young student, you know, in his early 20s experienced, and so on and so forth. So you need to think of like creative ways of narrowing down the topic. Oh, and also, yeah, Will or anybody else, if your microphone is not working, you could totally type, no problem. Yeah, you want to create more edutainment for this generation. So Alexis, I mean, I'm thinking like one example that really speaks to me are the TED Talks. I think that a lot of them are so well produced that like all of them that I personally use in my education, they use humor, you know, and when you laugh, you have fun. So, so I think, you know, being a little bit of a stand-up comedian as a teacher sometimes is really useful. I really love, oh, and yeah, of course, Alexis, you're an ECE. So then like, think about couple of good examples, maybe one from your own experience as a child and one right now that like provides a great basis for children to actually get excited about learning. Because, you know, the sad reality is that a lot of children, in particular, you should also narrow it down to like Canadian curriculum, right? But my children experienced COVID, and the only reason as very young children, right? And all people who were alive experienced COVID, but what I was going to say is that my children were privileged enough that I had some money to put them into a private little school during COVID, so that they don't have to sit on Zoom when they're 5 years old. So my children got to have chess club and music and drama and, you know, all kinds of things. And I think that, you know, they learn the joy of education. And then if you come back to the public school and there are 35 students in your class, edutainment is more difficult to accomplish, but maybe not, right? Oh, cool, performing arts in Algonquin. You still do stand-up? Cool. Okay, so how about you can even think about like the use of humor in education. I will crack a joke after I stop the recording so that I don't say anything incredibly inappropriate on video. But let's just say I had professors during my especially undergraduate degree where, you know, like professors who are in their 50s are facing people in their like teens still, 17, 18, 19 in the first year. And some of my professors made me laugh to tears like during lecture. And I thought that it was like the best time of my life, to be honest. I miss being 20 years old in class. Yeah, so I think Alexis, you got it pat down. You have a lot of ideas and experience, so I will move on. I see Ghoul is sharing. Hang on, whoops. Oh wait, yes, right here. Topic of the positive impact of gaming on the mental health of adults. Yeah, okay, sure. You could do that. And you're direct messaging me. So I'm going to ask you to just next time click on everyone in the meeting so people can see what you're writing. Just sort of technically it's more beneficial. Yeah, so Gould, tell me, okay, positive impact of gaming on mental health. Topic chosen. Who is your audience? Is it kids? Is it teenagers? Is it adults?
My audience will be adults, that because they are having experiences of the practical life too, as compared to children or youngsters
Right. So balance. Yeah.
below 18.
Okay. So yeah.
In the morning, I was searching, I found some research articles. So I was thinking that it will support my statement. So I have a question related to that too, because I have written a statement for my today's assignment. So can I include a statement from the selected research article in order to add weight to my statement? That mean why I'm saying so?
Yes. Sorry, your microphone just cut out, I think. Wait, so you already found some articles. You're ahead of the game because we're going to do that next week. But in order for you to formulate your idea, if you read some articles, that's great. I can also challenge you if you want, and you can say no. But I can challenge you and give you an article that talks about the really scary impacts of video games, but they are about children, so it might not be useful. But this is an article that I really like that talks about the problems with video games. So you might find that interesting or not. It's not mandatory for you to read it, but I do want you to think about ways in which, just like Jane McGonigal in our article from last week, she considered like how people might argue that video games are often perceived in a negative way. So my also recommendation is for you to think about a particular game or game platform that you're thinking about that you would use as an example, right? So like, don't be vague, not all video games, but like this particular game is good because, right? So the more specific, the better is all I'm saying. Avoid generalizations, try to
Yes,
give
I got
specific examples. Yeah.
some technical issue.
I'm so sorry. Your
The
microphone is
voice
cutting
breaking.
out. Yeah. Do you think you could type? Because I'm hearing a lot of static and it would be better if you write the question.
Yes,
Yeah, so just write the question so that I can respond to it better, because right now your microphone was working and then it stopped working. I'm sorry. So take the time to type. I'm gonna address, there are two more students who shared. So Shireen, benefits and pitfalls of intermittent fasting for adults. Yes, that's a great topic. And so adults, maybe be a little bit more like, how do we define adults? So you're gonna say, okay, like children and teenagers are not included in this conversation because intermittent fasting is something that perhaps can bring great advantages, and I agree, I've practiced it for years. But specifically, yeah, so young and middle-aged adults, and the argument, sorry, I'm trying to scroll. The argument is for, or do you think you will just in a balanced way sort of discuss both the benefits and the pitfalls? Okay, so mostly benefits, but then you will address the concerns, right? Okay, yeah, sounds great, Cher. I'm really curious to learn about your experience with it because the reason I became an intermittent faster is because of yoga. If you eat a big breakfast, you can't do yoga. You will throw up. So my yoga practice and teaching makes me not eat until about 12 o'clock p.m. afternoon usually, or I can have a couple of spoons of like kefir or something in the morning with a cup of tea, but I don't eat breakfasts most of the days. And so I'm curious to hear your personal experience with it, and of course backed up by sort of, well, what's the logic of it? Like, why do people do this stuff, right? Why don't people just wake up and eat a lot of eggs and bacon? I'm just joking. Okay, so Layla, I said you're next, and then I'll get to Mohammed and Hasti. And the answer quick question to Hasti is yes, you can absolutely write about any topic you want, but you need to get a little more specific. So Layla, go ahead.
So I came up with 2 topics. I just wrote it down, so I will read it. And one is about social media. Almost everyone has spent hours scrolling through social media like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter without realizing how much time there has passed. While social media helps us stay connected, on the other hand, it can also take time away from real conversations and experience for real life. And we can easily get addicted to it. I want to write an editorial encouraging teenagers to find a healthier, balanced way to between their online and offline social lives.
Excellent. Okay, so you're specifically addressing teenagers because they're probably arguably the most vulnerable. And then despite the fact that you will acknowledge that social media can create meaningful connections, and I agree. I have a beautiful, beautiful yoga community of like almost 2,000 people that either follow me or I follow in terms of like just yoga practice. So my stream of information is mostly like positive stuff from yogis. I feel like that does not damage my mental health. And it does not take me away from like the kind of conversation that I like to have. So, you know, that's great. But you're right that you want to think of at least a couple of examples of like how you can manage the addictive nature of social media. So for example, do we all know that we have settings on our phone where you could put it on do not disturb mode?
Yeah.
Like an hour before bed? Like
Yeah.
that's one good example of like how.
And also we have like we can put timing for Instagram. Like we can spend that time that we set for Instagram.
There are also apps that track your general screen usage and breaks it down for you, and you could like really think more critically about where you put your time into, right? So yeah. I think that sounds amazing, Layla. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Mohammed, the importance of stretching. Okay, good. One of the most overlooked habits for Gen Z. You're gonna have to back that up with like research because the only immediate, just wait, one thing I'm thinking, because my husband is like, he loves baseball, and the baseball players used to never stretch, and now they all stretch before the game. But in the general population, I think you're right. And the point you're making is that too much sitting, gaming, scrolling, not moving. So, but if stretching is the point, then maybe you could focus on, like all the, not all, but like specifically in North America, or you can even say as a student of Seneca, or as somebody who grew up playing sports or whatever it is, I believe that a lot of young people now have poor posture, not enough exercise, and certainly stretching is something that is not advertised as much. Like I teach yoga, so I teach stretching, but a lot of people are like, let's go to the gym. get all big and stiff, you know, and then you can't scratch your own shoulder because your biceps are too big. So, but young audience who could benefit from, and you're going to provide some interesting ideas of low effort habits that improve daily existence. Okay, go ahead. Questions, comments? I support this topic very much.
I'm just gonna say, I know my opening statement was a little bit bold, and I'd have to find citations and evidence to back it up. But it's a little bit more personal to me because I used to have an L4, L5 herniated disc. If you taught yoga, I'm pretty sure you might have heard of that.
I have an L5 herniated disc too.
Okay, perfect. So you understand the struggles and how much stretching helps.
And it pinched my sciatic nerve, so I couldn't walk for 2 weeks because I used to play soccer and volleyball, so I pounded the injury too much, and then yeah, I was on painkillers. Yep. No,
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
At the age of 16, I was actually bedridden for almost a year. It was a
I'm
really bad
sorry.
case.
Oh wow.
Then the reason I said it's for Gen Z is because most of the time when people think of back problems, knee problems, they
They think
associate it
about
with
adults.
yeah,
Yeah.
older
40
age.
plus.
And I remember I went to a chiropractor and he mentioned if I could touch my tippy toes, I'd be able to walk without issues, right? And it's good you mentioned yoga because I took it in high school and it helped, but I'll be honest, I'm an unnatural at yoga. I was terrible at yoga. It helped a lot.
So my teacher's name is Kino. This is for just not advertisement, but I think she's one of the most talented yoga teachers I've ever met in my entire life. If you look her up, she has a ton of free lessons all over the internet. She also has a paid for website where you can talk to her live. But basically, yeah, I agree with you that if you have an experience of being almost bedridden because of basically, I would call it not even just lack of stretching, but people don't learn body awareness at a young age. So for example, if you notice, I keep overcorrecting my shoulder because I was diagnosed with microscoliosis when I was young. And my mother, who was a nurse, she took me to all these torturous massages to fix it. So I'm almost not scoliotic, but if I continue to sit like this, I'm gonna ruin my posture even more. So I constantly try to pay attention to my posture. So I think your personal experience, you can tell one paragraph of personal experience with pain and immobility and how you want young people to become much more aware, much faster before they do too much damage. Right? So I think it's a fantastic topic. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
you, Mahan. Yeah. Now, Hasti, smartphones changed human relationships. Yeah, but how specifically? What do you think? Is there something great about it that you want to talk about? Because there are things that are good about it. Is there something negative you want to talk about? Is it something in between?
I haven't think about negative or the positive thing,
Okay.
but I'm gonna think about it more as specifically for sure.
Okay.
It just came into my mind and I just write it down. Yeah, but I'm gonna think.
So question though, can you
specific? Yeah.
Brainstorm with us. Brainstorm. What things do you think you do differently now because of smartphones? Because I'm old enough that I did not have a smartphone until I was 16 years old, I think 17 years old. Yeah. So what aspect of smartphone impact do you think is interesting to you?
Nowadays, especially the new generation, they are mostly 90% of the time of their day, they are just spending on their phone. And nowadays when I'm just going to restaurants, I'm watching the people that they are just sitting together, but
like this.
Exactly. Yeah, but they are not spending time together. They are just sitting together. And
okay. So there's a problem of too much time. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I just want to say, so too much time is a problem you're thinking about. And
yeah, and the managing using technology and the smartphone Like
Yeah.
they have to just have a balance between them, like using a smartphone in like the right time and spending it with your partner or like in your relationship. Like you have to just, you know, pay
Yeah.
more attention to that balance, and it's hard. It's so hard
Well,
because
you
most
said
of the time you're just doing your business, you're doing your most of the important things in your phone. Like I can just give you an example. I'm doing my like banking things, I'm doing my study, sometimes I'm doing my like some discussion board or like some assignment in my phone, and because I don't have like time to reach my laptop or something like that. So and I can't like like having the time of spending more time with my partner. But
Yeah.
we have to manage it because nowadays all the things are just rounding in the circle of the smartphone. You're banking, you're studying, you're working, like, and even you're shopping,
Playing, talking, shopping.
playing, exactly, playing, checking your with parents, especially who are just immigrating from other
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
We are just like talking that when I'm just coming back from my work, I'm talking with my parents like for 1 hour and a half, and after that I'm cooking, and after that I'm just studying, and after that I'm sleeping. So I'm not gonna have enough time for my partner, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hard, because now the communication, all the most important thing are just bounding in the circle of a smartphone,
So
You
how?
cannot even do
Yeah.
things
Sorry.
that you can. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
No,
You
no, it's
can't do anything about it sometimes. You have to.
Okay, so the difficulty to balance and manage is a problem you're kind of considering. And I was thinking about the fact that smartphones, for me and everybody else, I think, who use their phones, not like my 12-year-old who just plays games and talks to his friends, right? Like that's different. So your audience is immediately, I think, adults.
Exactly.
Right, so smartphones are a source of convenience, okay, at a cost. So I'm thinking, for example, I use my smartphone for photography quite a bit. My grandma was a photographer for 40 years. I think that the invention of a good camera on a smartphone is like amazing, right? And I don't feel like that's a waste of my time. I have whole albums of pictures I took with smartphones, even though I tried to use a real camera for a few years and then I gave up because the smartphone became better, unless you're professional, like professional, right? So there are like ways in which I can argue that smartphones are now enabling people to be great photographers. That could be one little topic. And then, like that has nothing to do with the waste of time. It's more like about the efficiency, productivity, and high quality of this little computer. But if you want to think about the fact that you do, okay, so banking, education, education, entertainment, and even personal habit tracking. Okay. So for instance, what's it called? The fitness app, MyFitnessPal, like they're cool apps.
Exactly.
Yeah, that like help you to track what you've been eating and how much water you consumed and stuff like that. So the point I think you're beginning is like this little device in my hand is super powerful, but it's a problem to balance. So do some thinking about what you want to say to people who are like, we're all adults here, right? And we all try to manage it as best we can. So come up with some interesting ideas to share. That's all I'm looking for. Like, you don't have to solve everybody's addiction to social media problem. You could just talk about something interesting for adults who have to use smartphones. I mean, like, I only know one person in Toronto who does not have a smartphone. I swear, I know one human being who does not have a smartphone in all of Toronto. He's a little, outside of society, let's just say.
Yeah. But can I just write about like advantage and disadvantages of smartphones in
Yeah.
our life nowadays?
But now I'm going to say this for everybody, especially who's not online. Your word limit for your editorial is anywhere like 500 words to maximum 750 words.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful not to like spread yourself too much.
Huh?
Yeah, so you might want to kind of choose one side more than the other and more.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's up to you again. It's your editorial. Like, yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so
maybe.
much.
Yeah, but is it possible to just talk about like advantage and disadvantage of the smartphone in our life nowadays? Like, can I?
Yes, yes, you
Is it
can.
gonna be a little more specific?
But make sure you're focusing on like adults of a particular because
Yeah.
yeah, like your audience needs to be a little bit more specific. Like adulthood is basically
Yeah.
after you're 20 until you're dead. Right? So
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
focus, why don't you focus more like interestingly for yourself as a student who uses her phone for education, but then there are other problems that you need to balance and manage, for example. Like you can narrow it down to your own experience and situation right now. And as you
Yeah.
said, yeah, like some people coming from other countries are not as addicted to the phone.
Mhm.
And then there are people who grew up here, and by the time they're 19 years old, I mean, like you, as you say, never mind in a restaurant, they're walking across the street like this.
Yeah.
And then the poor drivers have to make sure not to hit them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah, but can I just maybe I'm gonna just change it a little bit in the last minute. It depends, like because now I'm on my way to my home, so my mind is a little bit like busy, not that ready enough. So can I just change it in the last minute? Maybe like
yes,
add something or like take something.
yes, I am not telling you what to write about. So if
Yeah.
tomorrow you decide to submit some other topic, I don't want to stop you. You need to choose what you
Thank
want to
you.
actually write about. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's great.
You're very welcome. Gul, you have a good question, which is important for everybody online. So to be clear, our final assignment will be between 500 to 700 words. Before that, this week, meaning tomorrow by midnight is the deadline, but if you need 24 hours to take extra time to figure it out, I'm okay with that, no penalties. So for tomorrow, 200 words of a proposal. So number one, topic. Number two, audience. And explain it as best as you can so that I can understand what you think you would want to write about. And the 500 to 700 words, that's a couple of pages of writing, right? But it's not long. It's not a long essay, it's an article, right? Alexis, that's a great question. So any of the readings that you completed in this course that were posted as mandatory readings can be on the exam, but about 2 weeks from now, when we finish this assignment, I'm going to already start working on the exam. I don't completely create it myself, like it has to be approved by my department. So I will choose readings from this semester, and I will tell you there will be 3 readings you're responsible for to respond to on the exam. So I would say focus on the editorial this week and next week, and then after that, I'm going to start preparing you for the exam. But thank you for a good question. Ghoul, yes, you can. I'm never against citing. Yeah, okay. So the exam is a 2 hour if you're in person, like in class, and you sit and you write. But if you're online, same thing, but you're online and I will literally sit there with you online. And if you have questions, I will be able to answer them. You will have a 2-part exam. COM101, all exams are basically standardized, but each professor has their own readings. That we base the questions on, but the format has a lot to do with what you're doing right now in this exercise, which is thinking about how you create persuasion. So appealing to logos, ethos, pathos, trying to, understand how persuasion works. And so typically on an exam, I will give you an article or 2 of the 3 that we read, and I will say, can you explain to me why this article is persuasive? Like, just as an example, that could be one of the questions on the exam. So it's like something you read and something you already practiced, and you just have to write a paragraph and usually a short, not like an essay, but like a short response, sometimes even an email. But in a sense, you are just repeating all the skills that you already practiced during the term on the exam. So you will submit a document through Blackboard. Yeah. You're welcome. Okay, guys. So I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. I want to say thank you to everybody who was here online today. And those of you who are tuning in through the video recording, if you have questions, you have my email address, but if you want to discuss your topic with me, I am going to set up an office hour. And usually it'll be on a Friday, because that's the only day that I'm not teaching right now. So if you have a personal question that you want to set up a Zoom meeting, you could do that with me. Or you can, if it's a short question that I can easily answer through an email, you're welcome to email me and clarify. So again, the 200-word proposal is due tomorrow, or you can have, I'm going to start marking them on Friday, truthfully. So if you can submit it by Thursday night, I'm okay with that too. Because I know that you have other courses and I'm teaching until Friday anyway. Friday, I will be grading all my classes work. Again, thank you for being here. I appreciate your participation. I heard some excellent topics. If you didn't get a chance to ask a question, again, please reach out. I encourage you to look for my support and or use the library for tutoring. We have great resources through the Seneca Library. So I'm going to stop the recording now. See you next week, those of you who are just asynchronous. And if there are any final questions, I will field them right now after I stop recording.